October 3rd, 1986. A Soviet Yankee-class ballistic missile submarine prowls 680 miles off Bermuda, carrying 34 nuclear warheads aimed at American cities. The world knows the story. Catastrophic accident. Heroic crew prevents meltdown. Submarine sinks with honor. 2 years later, a Soviet research vessel reaches the wreck at 18,000 feet. The hull is split open. The missile hatches are forced wide. The nuclear weapons are gone. And what they found inside the reactor compartment was something no one was prepared for. 4 young Soviet sailors died in the disaster. One of them, 20-year-old Sergei Preminin, volunteered to enter a superheated, radiation-filled reactor compartment, knowing he might not come out. He saved the eastern seaboard from nuclear catastrophe. He died trapped, alone, as his oxygen ran out. For decades, families were fed incomplete truths. When researchers finally reached the wreck in 1988, they discovered evidence that contradicted nearly everything Moscow had claimed. 34 nuclear warheads and 2 reactors still contaminate the Atlantic floor. What happened in K-219's final moments? And what remains sealed inside that iron coffin 3 miles down rewrites our understanding of Cold War nuclear brinkmanship. The official Soviet account was clinical. Seal failure in missile tube 6, seawater contamination, unfortunate accident. But K-219 had a dark secret in her service record. Declassified documents and survivor testimony revealed the truth. October 3rd, 0514 Moscow time. A watch officer notices water dripping from missile tube 6, but this missile used hypergolic fuel, heptyl and dinitrogen tetroxide. They ignite on contact. Mix them with seawater, and you create superheated nitric acid and nitrogen dioxide gas. At 0532, the explosion was instantaneous. It killed 2 sailors outright, ejected a 1 megaton nuclear missile into the Atlantic, and ripped a hole through the pressure hull. But here's the real kicker. K-219 had suffered this exact failure once before, in 1973. One tube was already welded shut. Soviet command knew these missiles were ticking bombs. They sent her out anyway. This wasn't fate. This was negligence, elevated to state policy. The R-27 missiles required pre-fueling, couldn't be defueled without returning to port. For 15 years, K-219 sailed with liquid bombs in her hull. American submarines used solid fuel for exactly this reason. In the Politburo meeting transcript from October 6th, Gorbachev asks, "Could it have happened due to lack of competence of the crew or because of cowardice?" He was blaming the victims. Moscow's first instinct was to accuse them of treason. The explosion should have triggered an automatic reactor shutdown. It didn't. As toxic gas filled the submarine, instruments showed reactor temperatures climbing. Without intervention, a meltdown was imminent. But the control systems were destroyed. Someone would have to go inside. The VM4 reactors each had 4 graphite control rod assemblies. Normally, you pushed a button. The rods dropped, absorbing neutrons, killing the reaction. But the automatic triggers had melted. Manual operation meant entering the reactor compartment itself, turning a hand crank, physically forcing deformed metal rods into an active nuclear core. Senior Lieutenant Nikolai Belikov went first. Temperature had reached 70 degrees Celsius, 158 Fahrenheit. He managed to crank down 1 rod before his oxygen ran out. Belikov and 20-year-old seaman Sergei Preminin then went back in together. Taking turns on the hand crank, The holders bent from thermal expansion. They forced 3 more rods into the first reactor. When they emerged, temperature had exceeded 180 degrees. Belikov collapsed from heat exhaustion. An officer reported to Captain Britanoff, insufficient. Oxygen remained. The second reactor was still active. What makes this particularly chilling is the similarity to Chernobyl, which had occurred just 6 months earlier. Soviet reactors used the same graphite rod design. Premanin knew entering that chamber might kill him in more ways than suffocation. He volunteered. He was on his first submarine patrol. He donned the anti-radiation suit, checked his oxygen mask, and went into the inferno alone. Working from the chief engineer's instructions, he cranked the final control rods into place. The reactor shut down. He had prevented what Admiral Chernovin would later call a second Chernobyl, this time 3 miles off the American coast. Premanin completed the shutdown. The reactor was secure. He turned to leave. The hatch wouldn't open. Engineering analysis revealed what trapped him. Fires in adjacent compartments had superheated the air, creating a massive pressure differential. The hatch was held shut by thousands of pounds of force. From outside, crew members tried desperately to force it open. They failed. Premanin was alone in temperatures exceeding 180 degrees. His oxygen supply was calculated for the shutdown procedure, nothing more. According to survivor testimony, his nostrils began gushing green foam. The nitrogen dioxide gas was converting the moisture in his lungs to nitric acid. It drowned him from the inside. He died of asphyxiation, toxic gas inhalation, and heat exposure, sealed inside the compartment he had just saved. Soviet submarine design had no backup egress from the reactor compartment. Premanin's death was preventable. In his hometown, a marble plaque reads, "To Russian seaman Sergei Premanin, who has saved the world from a nuclear catastrophe." He received the Hero of Russia Medal posthumously in 1997, 11 years after his death. His body remains in that reactor compartment, 18,000 feet below the Atlantic. K-219 surfaced. Most of the crew evacuated. The submarine was badly damaged but stable. Soviet freighter Krasnogvardeysk took her under tow. Then Moscow issued an order that stunned everyone: return the crew to the submarine and continue the patrol. Gorbachev, preparing for the Reykjavik summit with Reagan, couldn't afford the appearance of weakness. They ordered security officer Valery Pshenichny to assume command from Captain Britanoff. The tow cable snapped. Gorbachev's response: the boat was taken for towing, but the tow cord broke. Again, not clear why. In short, one mystery after another. He suspected sabotage. Before the order could be executed, flooding reached catastrophic levels. On October 6, 1986, at 11:03, K-219 sank to the Hatteras Abyssal Plain, 18,000 feet down. Soviet officials believed the hull would implode at 2,300 feet. It didn't. The submarine reached the bottom, largely intact, which meant everything inside remained preserved, including Premanin's body, including evidence that would contradict the official narrative. Britanoff was immediately charged with negligence, sabotage, and treason. For 2 years, K-219 lay untouched. 5,400 psi of pressure, near freezing temperatures, absolute darkness. In 1988, the Soviet research ship Keldysh, equipped with deep-sea ROV technology, sent cameras down into the abyss. The images were classified immediately, but details emerged. The submarine sat upright on a sandy bottom. The hull had broken in two, aft of the conning tower, but hadn't imploded. And get this, several missile silo hatches were forced open. The missiles were gone, along with their nuclear warheads. Soviet analysts theorized the missiles fell out when the submarine hit bottom, but the hatches were found bent outward and damaged in patterns inconsistent with internal pressure release. The reactor housing showed radiation containment intact. Preminin's shutdown had worked, but 14 to 16 nuclear warheads carrying enough plutonium to contaminate entire coastlines were simply missing. Gorbachev had been right to worry. In the Politburo transcript, he references the CIA's 1974 attempt to raise K-219, Project Azorian. Soviet officials feared the Americans would try again. The U.S. Navy issued a categorical denial, but at 18,000 feet, 3 times deeper than Glomar Explorer's rated capability, recovery would require technology that officially didn't exist in 1988. Russia classified all photographs of the wreck. What they saw down there remains hidden. Whatever the cameras captured at 18,000 feet was too sensitive to share. Here's where the story takes a turn that changes everything. When Soviet researchers analyzed the interior footage, they found the missile compartment in a state that defied official explanations. Blast patterns on the internal bulkheads showed the explosion's force, propagated in directions inconsistent with a simple fuel leak. More disturbing, the reactor compartment hatch, the one that trapped Preminin, showed deliberate damage to the pressure equalization valve. It had been sealed from the outside. The story we were told for 38 years was incomplete at best. K-219 didn't sink because of an unfortunate accident and heroic sacrifice. She sank because Soviet submarine design was fundamentally flawed, because Moscow prioritized weapons over crew, and because decisions were made that cost lives unnecessarily. Bottom line, the pure horror inside K-219 isn't just Preminin's death or the missing warheads. It's the evidence suggesting his sacrifice might have been preventable, that the valve that trapped him might not have failed, it might have been secured, and that what really happened in those final moments is still classified. K-219 lies 3 miles down, with 2 nuclear reactors and an unknown number of warheads. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. Preminin prevented an immediate meltdown, but he couldn't stop the slow-motion environmental catastrophe unfolding on the ocean floor. Soviet submarine safety protocols were overhauled after K-219. Liquid-fueled missiles were phased out. Reactor compartment access was redesigned. But families waited decades for recognition. Preminin wasn't declared a hero of Russia until 1997, over a decade after his death. Where are the warheads? If they fell out naturally, why were the hatches bent outward? If someone recovered them, who had the technology in 1986 to reach 18,000 feet? And what's in those classified photographs? What makes this particularly haunting is that Preminin saved millions of lives, and no one knew for 11 years. How many other heroes lie entombed in Cold War wrecks, their stories sealed by classification stamps? What else is down there, hidden not by the ocean's depth, but by the decisions of those who sent them? What do you think happened to K-219's missing warheads? Let me know in the comments. If this story stunned you, hit subscribe for more deep-sea Cold War mysteries. What should we investigate next?